have the people, and that's just not fair. And so the Senate's really starting to lean in to these kind of rural, they're not innovations. You've been talking about them way before I got here, but they're really the kind of rural justice that we need. Pilot funding is also at a record high in the Senate. Now that's fine, but it's not finished. And I have a bill with Natalie Blais to change the formula, because while pilot's good, Hadley should get more of the more. But you're not. You're going to get less of the more. It's still more. But we can do that, right? Under Governor Baker, the pilot formula changed in shameful ways, that where our land value is not as high as, say, Wellesley or Nantucket. Wellesley and Nantucket get rewarded for those land values where we don't. So it's an added insult, I think, to the already too low pilot. So the pilot's getting up to actually where the state auditor says it should be. The former Auditor Bump, who did the rural report. So these are some indications of the kind of work we've been doing in the Senate to make sure that the budget reflects both Hadley's values, but also what Hadley really needs and deserves. And we're not there yet, but I do feel a shift. I also feel a shift in the Healy Driscoll administration. Rep Blais and I put together and put forward a rural agenda. And we said, okay, you say you want 351 cities and towns to be in your administration. Well, here's what it looks like for our communities. And one of the first things they did within their first 100 days was they established an Office of Rural Policy. It's been something we've wanted for a long time before I was in office, but I picked up that gauntlet. And that person is in the pipeline to be hired. And the goal of that person is not only to be a voice, as we are voices with you on behalf of rural communities, but also to examine state grant programs and say, hey, I don't know about that housing program. You're valuing numbers of units. We may not need 100 senior units, but we may need 10 or 20. But we get disadvantaged in the grant process because the grants are sized for Eastern Massachusetts, some of them, not all of them. So I'm very excited about that. Again, these are steps forward. Is it everything that I should be delivering? No, it isn't. But I do feel like there's some traction, and I do feel like the delegation's working super hard together to get this done. I want to just shout out to Elena's grant program. One of the things that we did with the planning agencies last session, and we're doing it again this session, and you've gotten some notices about it, is a grant series. FERCog is helping to lead the way with Elena wrangling, lots of the moving pieces. Last session, we found this to be wildly successful. For example, the one-stop grants, Undersecretary Ashley Stolba said, oh my God, you guys, you had so many applications from Western Massachusetts. And that was just one of many grant programs where the program officers said, hey, this is good. It's not only our people going and hearing from these folks in Eastern Mass who sometimes are just emails and far away, but it's them talking to us and hearing, this doesn't work, or this is too hard, or this took me 5 hours and I don't have a grant writer. Like, they need to hear from us the reality of what it is to get money. And we need to also, again, with this Office of Rural Policy person, we need to right size these grants. One of the things, in addition to, and I forgot to mention this, we need to do better with the aid that's coming without you writing grants. So the UGA grant, the unrestricted, it's a terrible acronym, right? Unrestricted government aid in the Senate is quite high this year. And again, that's money that Hadley won't have to apply for, nor should you have to apply for. And that's the kind of work I think we can do better and better at. In addition to things like within the Chapter 70 formula around circuit breaker and special education and ELL, English language learners, and low-income students, we can and should deliver that money in better amounts to Hadley, where you don't have to write for a grant for it. You can just, and you should receive it for your excellent school. So that's the kind of work that I've been doing. The public health work that I did largely last session continues to be with me. One of the issues I'm working on, which I know is important to Hadley, is mosquitoes. And the mosquito law that we rewrote a temporary law which expired, and now we have a bill in which is before the Joint Committee on public health. Oh, sorry. No. The Environmental Natural Resources Committee that had a hearing. And there are numbers of other bills that, we have nicknames for them. We might call them the Hadley mosquito bill or because we've heard from Hadley, we've heard from constituents. And I just want to thank, those of you on the select board and in the town, for bringing us in on projects that have been meaningful to Hadley. The Hawk Signal, the Housing Authority, Vesta Homes. We've been grateful to be able to be a partner with the town on some of this work. And certainly we can do more. And I think the more should be in my answering what your good questions were and comments. So if it's okay, I'll turn there. My password doesn't work when I need it to work. I don't know why. Does anybody have a question or comment? Oh, that's up now.
What's your password?
Oh, wow. Very good question. I have to type it to know it. The increase in local option meals tax. So thank you, Carolyn, for culling these. And I know Jane and Molly sent some in. But the increase in local option meal tax sooner than later, was that an interest in a bill, authorizing it, or was it your interest in a local?
That was part of the in-house finance team. And Dan, I know you're on the call. Dan, that was one of your issues, correct? This is our assessor.
Yeah,
great.
I believe there's a bill
There is.
right now to go up by 0.75% with the local option.
Yes, thank you, Dan. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the Zoom screen. Yes, and because you raised it, our chief of staff is looking into that now. And I wasn't sure whether or not you were going to want to file a home rule on this, but there is a bill. Our chief of staff, Jared, looked into it today because you gave it to Elena. We reached out to the committee staff. We reached out to the folks who filed it. So we're happy, to take your comments, to understand what's important to Hadley here, and to get involved.
Money is important.
Money is always important, Jane.
This seems to be a
Yeah,
relatively painless way for our taxpayers.
Yep.
Because our restaurants are not necessarily residents.
Yep.
To help the town.
no, I think this is very good, and I was glad you raised it. I didn't know it was, I didn't know it was a conversation, and that's why this meeting is good, right? You tell us what's important. So we certainly will be responsive to that. I also wanted to say that I have a statewide bill for a local option luxury real estate transfer fee. It's a local option bill. I think it's a smart bill. It's gaining statewide support. It would give, if passed, Hadley a bucket of tools, which you could take and use. You can decide, do you want to, and you either can choose from homes that are above the statewide median, but probably for Hadley and communities in Western Mass, we choose the county median, which is going to be lower than the statewide. Then you can do a percentage above the median. You can do a transfer fee between 0.5 and 2%. You can choose who pays. Half the seller, half the buyer. We don't, where the bill is agnostic, that's a tool. The only thing the community couldn't choose is the fact that it would have to go for affordable housing, which I know Hadley values very, very much. And it's gaining speed and gaining traction. There's a statewide coalition. It made your local option meals tax made me want to tell you about this. It's a great coalition, very diverse across the state. Large communities, small communities. And I feel like we can get this done. There are people opposed to it.
Where would it go in the budget?
That's affordable housing.
It's affordable housing.
Oh, it's
It would only go to
housing.
affordable housing. The bill that I have now
Okay,
would only go to affordable housing, and communities would adopt it and then have a whole bunch of decisions to make based on what you think your community would endure or thrive with, maybe. And you can exempt certain populations, right? There are ways that you can exempt, say, for example, farms, right? That's a big deal, right? Farmers they're sitting on land, but they're not sitting on cash, right? So maybe, and again, these would be Hadley's decisions, not mine.
above
as
and
they should.
beyond their APR 61A.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you'd have to, Hadley could sculpt it the way that Hadley's residents needed it. So, but we'll look into the meals tax for sure. The cannabis host community agreements. I will say this is an intense topic. Now, the bill that came out of committee, and actually Elena's sending a letter. She's wrangling a letter from our office to the Cannabis Control Commission based on this right now. And you'll get a copy. The town will get a copy. So the bill that came out of committee, and this has been very confusing, had in it, the initial bill had in it a provision to make the host community agreements subject to change retroactively. I opposed that. I just want you to know. Yeah, no, but
I agree.
so I could understand what the committee was trying to do. Our issue out here is not gouging, right? Maybe that's happening in other communities out east, but that's not what we were doing, right? We were trying to negotiate this new industry with these host community agreements. So to the Senate President's credit, she listened to folks like me and said, no, the bill that would come to the floor, which is what happened, did not allow for any retroactive renegotiation of host community agreements. That is very clear in the text. The Cannabis Control Commission right now is reviewing this. And so the town can submit comments and say, that it would be injurious to Hadley. We will say that it's injurious to our 25 cities and towns to have currently negotiated host community agreements subject to any retroactivity. It's also against the spirit of the law, right? I mean, and all you have to do is actually follow the trajectory of the bill. The bill came out with it and the Senate stripped it and passed a bill, So it is something that I am tuned in on. And I am concerned that the Cannabis Control Commission follow the letter of the law. It will have to do a bit of thinking about what happens when a cannabis establishment comes up for relicensing, which is different than the host community agreement. In our view, the agreement should stand, which it would stand as so for example, if you have a 5-year host community agreement, your establishment will need to get relicensed, but you've signed this agreement. And as long as the business gets relicensed, the agreement should stand.
Thank you.
So we will do our best to fight this out. And if Hadley fights, you should let us know. Let us see it. CC me and Elena so that we can amplify to the CCC.
So if we want to write our own letter, then we can get the information from you, Elena.
Yes,
We're going to send it. We're going to send it. We're going to send
Tomorrow.
a letter.
Tomorrow,
as soon as we
probably.
send it out. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll send it to you guys. And we're happy to, if you want to meet with commissioners, whatever Hadley wants to do in your own advocacy is fine, is great and appreciated and needed. But it's very much on our radar because we are, I think, we have a unique perspective on the cannabis industry out here. The Municipal Building Authority. So this is another issue I've heard loud and clear from Hadley, loud and clear. So Natalie Blais and I have a bill which would establish a municipal building authority. We actually got pretty far last year. We didn't have a revenue stream, and that was part of the issue that was blocking us. So actually Jared and Elena put their heads together with a bunch of other people, and we are proposing in the committee that it had its last session, liked the idea of going into the cannabis revenue stream and pulling out the sales tax. So the excise tax, as you know, is spoken for in many ways, but the sales tax isn't. It hits the general fund. So our idea is to pull out the sales tax, a percentage of the sales tax of the cannabis industry, because many of these municipal buildings are public safety buildings. And so that's the sort of a little bit clunky, but we're trying to make it an elegant tie. So we're pushing this. And again, any advocacy that Hadley can do, you can do it through the MMA, which is backing this bill strongly. You can do it just on your own, which is equally as powerful. And this is just a little public service announcement. The legislature now, every single hearing is remote option. So no longer do you have to do the, 5-hour back and forth and just sit for how many hours to talk for 3 minutes, which was an insult. We don't have to do that anymore. And I will say that during COVID, the amount of Western Mass voices that showed up were beautiful. And we tell a different story. So I really urge, I know you all are working so hard for the community, but in bills like you're talking about here, the Municipal Building Authority, if, and we'll certainly tell you when the bill comes up, but if you could testify about your lack of capital to be able to do this, it would mean a great deal. And at the same time we do this, we're working with the MBLC and we're working with MSBA to try to get them also to right size to our part of the world. But I'll keep going on your good list. The value of state-owned land and equity. So we talked a little bit about this with pilot. There is a formula readjustment that we need to make. And it is embodied in the bill that Rep. Blay and I have. And again, your acknowledgement of that as a town or as individuals, select board members or town administrators is very valuable. Anything you do is valuable because what's true is that while I think we're trying to level the scales a bit, it's very loud in Boston. It's very loud. So we have to make some noise here. Jane, you talked about calculating the town average income.
Yes. When we went to that Western Mass hearing, I was fascinated to hear how the hill towns with 1 or 2
Yeah.
wealthy people get totally skewed upward in their income when that's not the reality of the
Yeah.
town nor the tax base. And that somehow that formula needs to be totally looked at.
That's true. That is very, very true. I should say that one of the ways that formula, in my understanding, appears is with unrestricted government aid. And the Senate is, and I'm supporting this, I actually am pushing it, is re-looking at UGA because the way that wealth, it's EQV, the way that wealth is defined is, it disproportionately does not benefit us. And with local aid, the wealthier towns, we should actually question whether or not the wealthier towns should qualify for unrestricted government aid, period. But that doesn't exactly answer your question,
We're
Jane.
seeing this, we lose a lot of grants because we are a wealthy town.
Yeah. No, and this is something we have to work on.
But
And
we're not necessarily wealthy because, maybe because of some of the income, but we're also known as a retirement community because there's a lot of people
Yeah.
that come over here and retire because their taxes are so low that they travel across and come from Northampton or they come from Amherst and settle over here, because it's a lower tax rate for them in their retirement years, which I can understand, but their income is still higher because they are retired and from what jobs they did have.
Yeah.
So that's where we're caught between two things of being called not only a wealthy community, but a retirement community.
well, I appreciate this. This is on our radar with MMA. So we will continue to dig into this and infrastructure. This is also, this is massive. We did pass a big ARPA bill and that money needs to make its way into communities. And I agree with you. We do need more money for roads and bridges and culverts. And we need it more equitably done, which is what I was talking about earlier, that Chapter 90 in both the transportation bond and in the Senate's version of the budget would be apportioned in large percent. 25 million of the Chapter 90, 50 million of the Senate budget by miles. And that's important. That's really, really important. The 62F, this is the tax returns. So both the House and the Senate, I think, are agreed in different ways that 62F was, it came upon the legislature, like a boom, and it was too bad that we didn't realize it was going to be triggered. I think leadership would both acknowledge that the House and the Senate have different proposals for ways to not trigger it again, and or the House has a proposal to trigger it more equitably. And so it is something that we have to look at as a legislature, but it's very much on the table. And the DPW facility, I think this is what we're talking about with the municipal building authorities, right? You need a DPW facility. You've built a senior center, you've built a library, fire station, like Hadley's doing its work, but there's only so much you can do while you also fund your schools and keep your municipal government operating. So I appreciate that. Paying for internships for municipal positions, Molly, I think Sean at DLS was starting to do that. Did Hadley participate in that?
The Sean Cronin's.
Sean Cronin's program?
Oh, yeah, we were the first ones.
You were, of course you were.
We got a student in Hadley.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, is Sean still doing that?
I'm still getting emails from him, so I'm assuming.
Oh, that's cool.
I'll have to look. at
Yeah,
these
I'm happy to reach out to Sean and ask about budget needs for him. I think he's a gift at DLS. Whew. But yes, I love that. We are also, you may have heard that the Senate is working to strengthen affordable college at community colleges. And one of the areas that the Senate has identified is municipal workforce. And that's everyone from the town accountant, valuable and invaluable town administrators to water operators, which I know are in very short supply. So the Dyke and Hadley, I would love, can we set up a separate conversation? Can that be a follow-up conversation with the town?
Yeah, and I think I probably have to do a better job communicating with you all that we are doing.
Yes.
That's kind of quiet behind the scenes with our engineers and our DPW and our maintenance. So yeah, I think that on my part, I need to get better communication to you as well.
That's great. I'd like to get more involved. You're working collaboratively with Congressman McGovern?
No,
Let's get him in too,
No.
and Dan. Because there is a little bit of state money, not what you need, but there is more federal money.
yeah, I have talked with Dan about, it would have to, down the road, it would have to be a bond for sure. Because it's a long-term project with getting it up to FEMA certification. So
Great.
yeah, let's definitely,
I'd love to do that.
yeah, that'd be great.
I'd love to do that. As it happens, my cousin is Josh Shanley, who has written a book
Oh,
on
yeah.
river safety. And he talks to me about Hadley all the time. So this issue was on my list to bring to Hadley in this meeting. And then it appeared on your list, Molly. And I was like,
Is he federal?
he worked for Northampton Fire for a long time and
Okay,
he's
yes.
consulted for MEMA and FEMA and
He was one of our speakers.
Yeah.
yeah.
Climate.
So he's like, you've got to talk to Hadley about the Dyke. So thank you. I would really love to be involved in that.
I always thought that the Corps of Engineers should be kind of responsible for, they built the dike and then they just kind of washed their hands of it and said, nope, we don't
Just
own
the
it.
Hadley part.
Huh?
Right, it's like the sidewalks on the.
Yeah.
I know. I mean,
Well,
so I mean,
so they're on Molly's list
I do
too.
have to say,
Yeah.
the Silver Jackets from the Army Corps is working with us now to do an educational aspect of the dike.
Oh, good.
Flood protection for the community, especially in the downtown area. So that will be coming up in the fall. So that will down. Great to have you guys a part of
That'd
that.
be
Oh,
perfect timing.
It would be wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah. And we'll get Jim in too. I think
Excellent.
he would love that. And so I know I'm over time, that the housing initiatives, barriers to housing. So we have a new housing secretary. The governor has thrown down on housing. We have this new rural affairs person, which they announced out here in Deerfield, because it was, advocacy from our region. So we have to work this out. There has to be a way that rural housing initiatives are honored in distinct ways. We're also bringing Lydia Edwards out, who's the Senate chair of the Joint Committee on Housing, because she's an Eastern Master and she's a wonderful woman, but she doesn't.
Come see us.
She needs to come see us and see the scale and see the opportunities. And I should have also said, we brought out Secretary Pat Tutwiler and your superintendent, who was so fabulous, was there. And so it was, that's the kind of thing we're doing with the administration. We're getting out all of the officials. Commissioner Ortega, the DHE, Department of Higher Ed Commissioner, is coming tomorrow. The DPH Commissioner, Department of Public Health, is coming in June, so they have to come out and see us and get to know us. And that's the opportunity there.
I think that's great that you're getting them west of 495.
Oh, they have to.
Yes.
And to their credit, many in the other administration, not everybody, but many did come. And it never fails to be remarkable, right? Secretary Tutwiler heard it loud and clear about rural schools and low and declining enrollment schools and how they're very different than gateway schools or, other schools. That's just true. And we haven't cracked it yet. And we're going to. So the convening municipal authorities and acting as a mediator for regional initiatives. I didn't know exactly.
I didn't know what I meant either.
Okay.
No, but I think the thought is that sometimes we get caught up in our own paradigms and our own fiefdoms, right? Where it may make sense to think more regionally around certain topics. When we're talking about transportation, when we're talking about housing, when we're talking about DPW initiatives that require coordination. And I think that having somebody at your level, or that's seeing it all and seeing what other communities are doing elsewhere in the state would be a great voice to have at the table and might help facilitate some of those conversations if and when it makes sense for them to occur.
But still keeping Hadley, I mean, yes, we want to know what's out there in the other communities, but we still want to keep Hadley.
Oh,
You
and
know
that's,
what I
I mean,
mean?
that's that's the town's heart, right? I totally get it. I hear what you're saying though. And I think I promise you in hearing that, we'll think about that and think about ways in which we act regionally. We are doing a couple of pieces of regional work. We're convening around First Light, which is the hydropower relicensing issue up in Gilmont, Northfield Gill, which will have a massive impact on the Connecticut if we don't nail it. It's really, and of course, the Connecticut's your lifeblood, like it is the whole valleys. And we're doing it with nursing training programs. But you're right that municipally we could do that as well.
That's my area, nursing.
So we're working with UMass to convene an entire region, look at how do we strengthen the pipeline of training all the way from the Voc schools to the community colleges and colleges, because our nursing homes and hospitals, we just don't have them.
And we actually need it with public safety.
Yes,
We need it with EMTs and paramedics and.
yes,
with-
they're in there.
About last night.
Yeah,
Right.
which,
Yeah.
just
Yes.
are not out there. We're really every community is starving
Yeah.
for these people to work in these areas.
Yeah.
And that's something we need to look at also.
I completely agree with you that they're in that realm.
And is there some kind of a state training program to support those people to learn? I know at one point, I can't remember, I think I was in the hospital in Boston for something, and they had actually gone out into some of the lower income communities and said, we will train you how to do blood draws, or we will train you how to take x-rays.
Well, each of the different levels of training need to be looked at and tied together. So it gets easier and easier to move through the ladder
Right.
from high school or Voc to perhaps community college to a four-year college and beyond. The Senate budget does actually break down some of the onerous, pretty awful bureaucracy. So we're beginning to look at that, and I'm going to convene this pilot of a regional pilot. So let's stay tuned on this. I'm mindful of your time, and I'm sorry I'm over.
Question on that, though. The training is one thing. How do we get people inspired to want to be involved with the training?
Absolutely. So the Senate does have in two past healthcare bills and in the budget and ARPA and this budget. So past budget, this budget and ARPA, we have incentivized both human service and healthcare professionals, including mental health, through loan forgiveness programs. That's one way. That's a carrot. It's not necessarily the only way. I also think we need to do more on college affordability, which we are. the Senate president would like free community college and other incentives by 2024. And I do think, and one of the targeted populations is healthcare. And, you know, I think if we could make it radically affordable, so that folks aren't coming out with crazy debt, that's one carrot. It's not the only one. And then the sidewalk maintenance, I think we should have a conversation about this. Elena had heard from the town and way back with David Dixon in 2019, and we certainly have heard from like Pathlight and Elena's done some work. Go ahead. I don't need to speak with you.
No, well, we've heard also from constituents who are concerned about safety and we just know it's a burden on the town and it's not. We've heard from other towns and that we've talked to DOT about it and they've basically said this isn't something we can fund statewide, you know, to plow all the sidewalks on state roads, which then leaves municipalities and to pick up that slack, and that's not fair. So we would love to talk more, I think, about what we could do.
I think we should bring MassDOT out for a meeting with municipalities on this. There are some target municipalities that have some significant, and we can ask Patricia Leavenworth, who I find to be a really pretty great partner. And, you know, there are significant lengths of state roads with sidewalks different than.
And maybe it's chapter 90.1. You know, I mean, there's some other,
Yeah.
we have chapter 90 money. Maybe there just needs to be.
Or MassDOT's budget goes up with sidewalks in mind.
Yeah.
Right. You know, either Hadley takes it on. There are grants that we've uncovered for equipment to clear, but that's still your personnel and still the material like salt or sand that you might use. So
the mindfulness of the state plowing onto the sidewalks that we've just cleared or are going to clear, because that's their job, is to clear the road.
right, but they're not coordinating with the town, and then all of a sudden that's double work for you or triple. So that's a problem unto itself. So I'd love us to get in with you and do this work. And then finally, I just want to say, I've had the opportunity to have many conversations with Chief Mason as we talk about police reform implementation and how we can and should do better as a state to provide resources. And I'm grateful for the chief's leadership and the Western, he's leading the Western Mass Chief on top of everything else. And we brought Secretary Reedy out last week. It feels like 5 weeks, but last week. And he's the EOP secretary, the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security. And we had many of the Western Mass chiefs there, including Chief Mason. And the secretary is listening. So we have money for the bridge program, as you know, but that's imperfect, right? Because you still, it's still really hard to figure out how you're going to pay for police officers, and still part-time officers were important here. And the difficulty of training at a full-time level after the bridge program for a part-time officer and salary disparities. One thing that we're working on is, which the secretary supports, and I found out was happening in Eastern Mass, is an academy, a police academy out of, and this is not baked yet, but out of a community college that would graduate trained police officers on the state's dime, so that a community like Hadley wouldn't have, and the chief, I'll work certainly very closely with Chief Mason on this, but Hadley wouldn't have to hire someone and then train the person and wait while the person's getting trained, and then have someone, and it wouldn't have to bear the expense of training that person, maybe only to find that perhaps it's not the best fit for Hadley. So I'm hopeful that this is one way that the state can listen to a rural reality with regard to police reform. And I will stay on this. I promise you this is a priority for us. Because I think we have to, I voted for the bill, and now I want to see it through. And, I've made that clear to Chief Mason and many other chiefs in the region who are affected by this. And I think we can and should. So.
And just a plug again I'm all about the police, and Chief Mason does a great job, and my whole department, our whole department does, our whole department does. But again, on the fire side of it, we've applied for that SAFER grant numerous years in a row. We haven't applied for it again. So we're kind of waiting to see, we really need a 24-hour fire department at this point because it's very difficult and as a lot of communities are finding out. And not just ours, is that it's hard to staff with on-call firefighters on the off shifts. I mean, they're just people have jobs, they're not available. And I think in many communities, it's a detriment. So I mean, that's really important. And I think I'd like, us to be taken very seriously this year also.
And that's the FEMA grant, right? The
Safer grant,
Yeah,
yes.
because that was actually part of the grants workshop that the senator mentioned last, I think it was on Monday. This time is there was a FEMA presentation specifically on that and the assistance for firefighters grant through them. So we'll send out, I haven't sent it out yet, but we have the recording from
Oh,
that.
good.
All right, so Hadley's planning on,
We applied for it again already.
Won't
Did-
find out until I think January.
January.
did Congressman McGovern write you any kind of support letter?
Mike wrote it.
So this is my final plug and I'll get out of your hair. Please tell us when you apply for grants. We are like an engine that could with Congressman McGovern and of course with Dan. We are happy to know about it. Sometimes it looks like a gushy letter from us. Sometimes it looks like a call to the grant officer if we can get that close. Sometimes it looks like an invitation to bring the people out to see or to meet with the town. It looks different depending on the rules and regulations of the grant, but you don't have to, of course, involve us. But
Why not?
why not?
I mean, now that you're telling us, we will.
Yeah.
So I will say that, if you look on our website,
Definitely helps.
if you look on our website, which is right now inoperable because we're having our host is having a problem. But when you do look on our senatorjoecomerford.org website, you'll see the letters we write. That's not even all of them. It's the ones that we remember to put on the website. So we churn all the time for towns. And we'd love to churn for Hadley. I'm not saying that we're the magic. I'm not saying that at all, but it is a good thing to have your delegation say, hey, these are our people and we care about them and this is a good grant.
This is so good to know and we will
Yes,
do that.
that's great.
So
Really supportive.
it's small for what you're doing. You're doing the heavy lifting of the grant. We can at least have your backs.
And we appreciate because we know you have our back.
Right, yeah.
Well,
And now we're learning more ways that you're going to hold our back and we're going to use them.
thank you.
Yeah. We appreciate everything you do
Yes.
too.
Thanks for all
Thank
the
you.
time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the great questions. Thank you for calling them.
Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Thank you.
All right, friends. Thank you.
At least you can get out of town without too much traffic.
Safe travels back.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm on to one more thing, but
Oh, there you
Yes.
go.
take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
It's good to see you. We'll follow up on.
All right. Yep, moving on to consent agenda 4.1. Warrants AP 2345S, AP 2345, AP 2344S, AP 2344B, AP 2344. Minutes from December 7th. Mosquito opt-out committee appointment, Dave DiLorenzo. Common particular license, TKP Hospitality Friendlies. Use of Lower Bay Road Reservoir. Young Men's Club Fishing Derby, June 10th, and use of Lower Bay Road Reservoir for Young Life Egg Wars.
David Winch from Young Life is on questions for him.
Yeah, I'd like to pull that one out. I do have a couple of questions on that one, but I'll make a motion to approve the rest.
Second,
Okay. Motion by Molly, second by Joyce. Now discussion, actually, we're striking it, so we vote on it now, right? And then, okay. All right. Vote on consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Yep, so I just, my only question, and I know Dave Winch is on here. Egg Wars sounds like an awful lot of fun, but it also sounds extremely messy. So I was wondering if we could talk about what you guys are imagining and what the cleanup might look like on that. You on there, Dave?
On mute.
I can't unmute if I'm just asking.
Yeah, you're on mute.
All right, there you go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Well, some of you know me. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but some of you do. And I've been working with kids for a long time. And yeah, we've done this before many times. We've done it in backyards. We've done it in woods. We actually have to tell you, this is full disclosure. We've actually done it at Hadley Reservoir a few times, and we clean up certainly all the things that don't degrade naturally, the egg cartons and whatever else we might have. But in the woods, the eggs and the shells has, never seemed to be a problem, whether it's in somebody's backyard or whether it's in the woods. So, but it will look clean on the pathway. It always has, but in the woods there will be, eggs decaying or not decaying, but being absorbed into the soil, I suppose.
Interesting.
I don't know. Go figure. Kids like to throw eggs at each other.
So what is the age range of this?
Well, this is with middle school kids right now. These are 6th, 7th, and 8th graders that we do this with. And we used to have a lot more kids come. Now it's a smaller group at this point in time anyway. So there'll be about a dozen kids, I would guess. Although it's going to rain and, pretty solidly. So
So what's the purpose? What's the purpose of it? What's the fun of this?
Why don't you guys come and join us?
Oh,
Again,
no.
Joyce, you need to go to a couple of Young Life meetings to understand that this is mild compared to a lot of stuff they do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, motion to,
I can pretty much tell you that I don't know if you've had complaints before, and I have to apologize. I should have gone through this process, but what's that old saying about permission versus forgiveness? And so I asked your forgiveness to start out, but there's nobody that's really complained. I think some hikers have enjoyed watching it, and we do a few things with the kids on the trail, egg toss, egg drop. We do a couple things right there on the trail, but most of it's running through the woods, and they're just chucking eggs at each other. And that's where they pretty much absorb into the soil.
this is pretty good since eggs are expensive now.
Yeah. We used to buy, when we had a larger crowd, 150 dozen eggs. But now I'm only buying 30 dozen for our smaller group.
Yeah.
And so do you have an issue with parking for the people who are participating?
No, it's mostly moms and dads dropping their kids off. And then we'll have a couple of vans to bring them over to my house for a little barbecue afterwards. And parents will pick them up at my house. So parking is really not an issue. There's plenty of parking there, so.
You don't want to have the egg wars in your backyard?
Well, if you say no, we'll probably have it in my backyard. Yeah. We've had it in Andy Klepacki's backyard already years ago a few times. So
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
I
All opposed, same sign. Excellent.
Have fun, Dave.
thank you. Can I ask you one more quick question? Would I need to come back on a yearly basis if we do this annually to ask again?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
no more forgiveness, Dave.
Okay. The point well taken. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, old business 5.1 flag flying policy. Looks like we have a draft, 2 drafts.
I did as you asked, from the meeting is it that meeting back in April where we moved this forward. I did go through and I removed, the commemorative flag portion of it. So now it's a much simpler and more streamlined policy that only allows governmental flags and a town flag. So
both policies are shown, but the one that says,
This is draft number 2.
right,
I mean, from the email I sent.
draft number 2 is the one that has only.
Yeah, draft number 2.
A motion to accept draft number 2.
Do you want me to read it?
No.
No, you're good.
This is y'all's draft,
Okay,
and so if you all would like to read it out loud, you're welcome to.
you're good.
Make a motion to accept draft number 2.
I'll second it, taking out my name as chair.
Sorry, I wrote this,
Okay.
I wrote just that.
Yeah. Okay, I got it. Never mind.
You gotta-
I was stuck on the other one.
I hear you.
Motion and seconded.
Just add Molly's name to that.
She's on second.
I bet, yeah, I spilled over.
Oh, okay.
I will make it look fancy and bring it back for y'all to sign on your meeting on June 7th.
Fine.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Excellent. I think that's safest option. All right, 5.2, Board and Committee Volunteer Handbook. Come on over, Jen.
All right, so this is still just a draft. We do have it out to the lawyers at the moment for them to do some editing and add anything that they think is missing, but Carolyn and I have gone through it. There are some things we still want to change that's in here right now, but we just wanted to kind of keep it on the agenda and let you know that it is still working. And if you have any feedback or anything you think needs to be added or clarified, we'll be happy to.
Do you think whatever changes you want to? You're talking about making, it'd be perfect timing if this is finalized for, all of the committee assignments and updates that are going to be coming up.
Yeah, I think we can. There's just some things, it's minor stuff. It's outdated and
Yeah.
stuff that's actually not legal. So we take care of that.
So we can get rid of all of that.
Not that it's not legal, but
So why is it again an executive session?
That's the other handbook.
That's the,
This is the
Yeah, we're doing,
volunteer handbook.
we got lots of handbooks.
Yeah, the other
one,
exactly.
Oh, okay.
Where do we stand with town council on this?
it's in there.
It's in their hands and I guess we'll have it back probably by next week.
Okay,
So
thanks.
by the next meeting, we can definitely have a lawyer approved version.
And you'll send it out as soon as you get it, so we can
Yes.
read that version. Okay. All right.
thank you. All right, thank you. New business, 6.1. North Hadley Sugar Shack.
Yes, so the Boysburgs are not here this evening. They are actually working to reopen their restaurant. They said that they're going to start doing dinners again. And so they are working, so they are not going to be here this evening. However, the ABCC has changed their rules for how we process changes to hours through their organization. We used to have a public hearing and we would have to notify the abutters of all of these steps, but now for change of hours, they submit a letter that states very clearly they would like to change their hours. I bring it to y'all vote to approve it. So when the Boysburgs applied for their license, and I want to be very clear, this is for their package store, not their restaurant portion.
Right, they're not serving alcohol at 10 o'clock in the morning
But they actually,
on Sunday.
Robert?
Oh, plus brunch.
But this is the takeaway. This is the off-premise
From the
license.
stores.
Yes. So, when they requested 11:30 to 8 p.m. They are now coming back and asking to be able to sell at 10 a.m., which is, sort of on par with what other liquor stores are doing within the town. So I would recommend, based off the fact that that is not what everyone does in town, but a large portion of our organizations, businesses do in town on Sundays, they do start selling at 10. So I would recommend that y'all approve it based off of the other businesses.
So 10 to 8 on Sundays?
Yes,
And what about the rest of the week?
the rest of the week is not being altered at all. Probably should look at their whole license to take what it says, but it's their standard business hours, I think, whatever it is.
They're 7 to 5.
But I don't think they sell alcohol at 7, but yes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, motion by Molly, second by Randy. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right,
Thank you.
6.2, board and committee appointment updates.
I asked for this to be put on the agenda because it is time. Again, for boards and committees, we're getting to the June 30th, we appoint on July 1st. So the time is coming for us to do your annual appointments for boards and committees. So I did attach a list. And I realized I just cut and paste from somewhere else. I dropped a page somewhere in there. So there's another little list in there and the people I dropped out. But these are the boards and committees that you have. And these are the members on them. And I would like y'all to, I'd like to send out an appeal for people to send their updated letters to us for their members for June 7th. So I would like to have it at the June 17th meeting, but I would like to have them in hand by June 7th. So I'm going to have an updated list for y'all to review. And also, there are some committees on these lists that I would like y'all to review. It might be that y'all find that they've completed their terms, because a lot of the committees are appointed until term or they're an annual appointment. And we did this, I was trying to remember earlier, I think we did this 4 or 5 years ago, where we disbanded some committees that had filled their purpose. And it's just one of those things, you know, I think it was the Agricultural Incentive Committee, had been around for years and years and years. And we just kept appointing people who were like, why am I on the committee? I don't know about it. So this is one of those things. We want to make sure that the committees that y'all are appointing are people who still have their committee still has a purpose to move forward in the town. So I'd like y'all to review that, and I would really love it for all of the board and committee chairs who will be getting an email from me tomorrow afternoon to review their appointed list and make sure that everybody is correct and resubmit it to us, and they'll get a fancy little email about that.
The other thing that this list gives us for our next meeting is a way to look at who we want to be liaison to.
Oh, that's cool. And if you see any mistakes, just, I'm not offended, just email me and I will fix anything. And that's what this is. This is the opportunity to fix and make sure everything's correct and up to date.
It helps us educate as well as things are changing. I think I sent you all an email about, you know, what people can say in public and how to facilitate that. You know, I sent those out to all the boards and committees. So this will help us, because I got some that came back and said, I'm not a member anymore, and things like that, and teaching people about quorums and stuff like that. And so we just need to do a better job educating all the committees. And certainly this committee handbook is a perfect time to have this updated, the committee handbook updated, and then some guidelines that I think we all need.
Right, and make sure every committee has a mission.
Yes, a mission.
The other thing we talked about.
Yep.
Staying alive.
Okay, great.
So pretty on both some mission statements. Thank you.
All right. 6.3, Towns Road paving, Route 9 paving and related traffic concerns.
Yeah, so I actually, Joyce had requested that we bring this up, and I also wanted to have Mitch and Scott first start with how they've been dealing with all of this, why certain decisions were made, some decisions were made out of our control. But the ways we've been trying to mitigate the aggravation that we all know we have some slight control over. But I think it was important that you hear from them first, because I think some of your questions might be answered in how they present what they've been doing. So did you guys toss a coin? Who's going first? Oh, okay, good. Right.
Looks like a last minute coin decision by the DPW director.
So I want to preface this with some of the information I'm going to suggest to you are my opinions as the police lieutenant for the town of Hadley. They are not the opinions of Mass DOT, Balthasar Contractors, any of our subcontractors. So as everybody knows, we are in year one of a 4-year, $27 million state highway project. This involves a full depth excavation, replacement of water, drainage, gas, utility poles, expansion of several retaining walls, diversions of waterways, and reconstruction of 4 major intersections along Route 9 with full traffic light system replacements. Balthasar has worked continuously since last spring and throughout this past winter, often with between 3 and 6 crews working throughout. Crews right now are mainly working on road reconstruction, drainage replacement, and retaining walls. A significant ongoing portion of the project includes approximately half-mile stretch of Route 9 between Middle Street and East Street that has been excavated, milled, and is awaiting a binder layer pavement, which will begin this coming Friday. Construction at times spans minimal to significant impacts on traffic, depending on the type of work that is ongoing for that particular day. The most significant impacts are when crews work in the roadway, causing reductions down to one lane of traffic, which forces the officers at those posts to do alternating flows of traffic. If multiple crews are blocking the lane of traffic at various points within the work zone, it increases the effect of traffic. So by now, a lot of folks, much to this dismay of some of the surrounding neighborhoods such as Bay Road and Rocky Hill Road, a lot of these motorists are finding their way around Route 9 and finding alternate routes to their destination. Up until recently, we received a few complaints, some occasional shaking fists at us, and the occasional obscene gesture. Since the beginning of the project, I've been the point person for the resident engineer at MassDOT, the project superintendent and foreman at Baltasar. I'm in touch with one of the three of them on almost a daily basis, often all of them several days a week and on the weekends. Another person that I'm in contact with on almost a daily basis, often multiple times a day, is Scott McCarthy. We don't even say hello when we get on the phone. We get down to it. We state our problem. We come up with a solution. I think my wife thinks that Scott McCarthy in my phone is a pseudonym. Oh, Scott again, huh? So when we problem solve, we don't always like the solutions we have to come up with. But our common goal is to take care of the town of Hadley, the residents, and the people who visit our community. Scott and I knew back in the fall that state work was going to conflict with town work. We started talking about it then, and we talked about it throughout the spring. And it was only on May 5th that we were given a firm yes on and police details were scheduled. We knew that milling was going to be occurring on May 11th and May 12th on Bay Road, Rocky Hill, and South Maple Street. On May 9th, it only became clear what was going to happen and on which streets. We knew milling was going to happen, but we didn't know where it was going to start. We didn't know where they were going to end. We didn't know which streets they were going to be on. On 510, the impact of the milling on Route 9 was extremely significant. We received numerous complaints. I want to note that the MassDOT work projections and impacts are posted on the MassDOT website on a daily basis. And it was that evening that we initiated reverse 911 calls to our entire Nixle network, even though we were still unsure of where our town work would be commencing on Bay Road. And because we don't know where the work may necessarily start, we don't know where the impact is going to be. We don't necessarily know where roads are going to be detoured until literally that moment when the officers arrive. On the morning of the Bay Road milling, I met with the 4 detail officers and we discussed the general theory of what was happening. We were still unsure of where work would commence. We were unsure how long the stretches that they'd be milling. And so everyone understands the stretch of the milling that they do, the longer that they go, the more detours that we have to enact, the more traffic that we have to detour, or longer stretches we have to alternate traffic. I discussed with the detail officers several scenarios and how traffic would be addressed based on what actually played out that morning. We understand that the construction impacts several thousand people on a daily basis, and I want to emphasize a few things about the roles of the police department. Number one is safety. It's our goal that all construction workers, engineers, surveyors, and officers all go home at the end of the shift just the same that they left. Number two, keeping traffic moving. I can tell you that our officers and our TCOs take personal offense when they see traffic backed up. They want to try to do their best and they want to keep it moving. And number 3 on our list is easy access in and out of the work zone for construction vehicles. Officers helping, making sure the loaders get out safe, making sure that the dump trucks get out safe. All 3 of these we take very seriously. When traffic is not working as planned, we change it. We detour it, we put lights and flash, our officers flap their arms. We do what we need to do to keep it moving. There's not a day that goes by where one of the detail officers or TCOs are now reaching out to me and telling me that something is not working and we need to do something better. We detour a road. We put the lights in flash, we activate them manually, but what we do sometimes on the fly and sometimes even to the dismay of Mass DOT. But we've got to keep it moving. So I did get a particular call from a very angry resident of a local community earlier this week. She was so angry that after she finally got through the construction, she stopped and made a point to yell at each one of the officers. Each one of them. Mhm. And she called me, spoke with me on Monday or Tuesday morning. And she explained to me how angry she was. And when she explained to me how angry she was, she told me that she was angry because the officers were not directing traffic fairly. And that was the first time I've ever heard it called that. And so I asked her, I said, well, what do you mean fairly? She goes, I watched that traffic be let go coming from Amherst, and it goes for 10 or 15 minutes. And then the traffic going towards Amherst, we'd get 2 minutes and we'd be stopped again. And then we get 10 minutes coming the other way and 2 minutes. And I said, okay. I said, and she told me where she was. She was at the intersection 98th Street. I said, I think this has to do a little bit with you not understanding just the scope of what the work that's going on there. And I think I can, and I ultimately, we got to the end of the conversation. She was happy. She thanked me. She understood. And she said, I didn't know how involved it was. She didn't realize that 2 other crews up ahead were down to 1 lane alternating, and they couldn't move the traffic going towards Amherst. It wasn't that they were just like, we're going to let that side just sit in traffic. They didn't have anywhere to go. So it's frustrating for everybody. It's frustrating for all of us. We're doing absolutely 100% the best that we can with what we have. And sometimes it's just in the moment. We've got to fix it right then and there. And sometimes, like I said earlier, we just don't know what's going to happen until we get there, until 7 a.m. when that work starts.
I just want to commend whoever was on Middle Street a week ago this morning. He did a dance that should have gotten a Grammy. He had that traffic going. There was nothing. Nobody had any sense of what was going on.
And I don't think that I think that you're likely speaking of, I know who you're talking about, but I don't think anyone really shares the same level of enthusiasm that he shares.
I missed it.
But we all share the same level of dedication in trying our best to keep it moving.
Right.
And really, I gave you 3 real main priorities. And what comes in like tied with number 3 is we don't like to be yelled at. We don't want to be yelled at, and we want to keep the traffic moving.
Yeah.
So
Tell him I say yay.
You guys undeservedly get yelled at. I don't think anybody here is going to have
No,
issue with
for
what you folks are doing.
Right.
I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to be out there doing that. And I, like everybody else, have figured out how to get to where I need to go without going on Route 9.
That's right.
And that's just part of the so-called game we have to play.
I hope I don't steal any of your thunder.
I don't know. I almost want to, like, every morning when you guys are starting, I'm driving by and I just want to like chuck some coffee out my window. But no, it's, I mean,
You like full cups of coffee? Like, here you go.
I don't know. It's like
Oh,
little
okay.
treat things.
I thought you were talking about throwing hot coffee at us.
No, absolutely not. But no, I drive that road 2 to 4 times a day and,
Well, I was out of town at 6:15, so that I didn't have to be to work till 8. You just plan it,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'll say something when you're done.
Yeah, just to touch on what Mitch said, obviously the town's paving, I've been working on for months, back after the new year. I started making the calls and getting a game plan together, and you know, it's a process to get approval, et cetera. Under a deadline for funding from the state, et cetera. And just, I guess, timing kind of stunk, but my hands are tied with it. You know, I asked to get on the list and, oh yeah, we'll be right there early in the spring. Well, you know, here they come. I get a call just short notice to when they're actually coming. You know, we're penciled in, but there's no guarantees because of weather related problems, schedule changes, et cetera. And, you know, when I got the notice that they were definitely coming, my first call was to Mitch to try to get the officers lined up. We've been talking about this for months, that shortage of traffic officers. You know, has a lot going on Route 9, et cetera, to make sure that we had, you know, officers for this lined up. And I know our guys were out there, we were setting up as instructed by Mitch, where he strategically wanted road closures, you know, don't allow traffic this way, but allow it this way, working together with this the best we could. And I apologize to any residents that were hung up in traffic, but unfortunately, kind of is what it is. You know, we have to maintain some side roads too. They're getting beat up pretty bad with the people going around Rocky Hill Road. Bay Road was getting pretty bad. Rocky Hill Roads, I did what we could with the funding we had, but it still needs more. But just unfortunately, just timing was not the greatest. And like I said, I can't control that. If I would have said no, we would have probably lost our funding because we would have never been able to get this done by our deadline. We would have just got kicked off the list.
So how close are we finished with Bay Road and Rocky Hill?
The town's paving is complete.
All right, so it's now everybody's back to Route 9 to complain.
Correct.
Okay.
I think the main thing is, as I said to Carolyn and to Mitch too, it wasn't no complaints about the police doing their job or the town doing their job. It was the fact that on last Thursday and Friday, you had 3 main arteries going in and out of town that were clogged. They had really big calcium on, you know, I mean, because you couldn't go Bay Road, you couldn't go Route 9, you couldn't go Rocky Hill Road. So where's everybody gonna go?
Yeah, it was just,
You know, and I think and we talked about next, yeah, I mean, well, not everybody does that. I mean, not everybody has an iPhone, not everybody. My old man's got an iPhone and he don't know how to use it, but I mean, so we wouldn't give him one anyway, but so, I mean, there's other people that don't have it either. So getting that information out to them to make them aware to, hey, just stay in for the day or get out early or do whatever. I think it's just communication to whatever at the point in time where you're on a time frame to get it done, Mount Warner having to do it. People asked and I asked, well, how come we couldn't do it when UMass was done with graduation and there was a time lapse there from the end of May until the end of June, the fiscal year? Well, how come we couldn't do it then? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where traffic would have been a little bit lesser. So, I mean, those were the questions. It wasn't anything to do with complaints about it happening or whatever, but they just didn't understand.
Right.
yeah.
Well, and I think, you know, if somebody doesn't have a cell phone and hasn't signed up for the town alerts, how do you notify them? Yeah, it's a really difficult issue. I think you did great by putting that out right away.
Yep. there's one
And you're
today.
dealing with, the majority of the people you're dealing with aren't Hadley residents anyhow. So there's no way to contact them. And if the people that travel this do it on a daily basis for the most part, if they don't know what's going on by now, then there's no help for them.
So I think this is why this was helpful. So now the public will, that you guys were excellent.
Yes.
Like you listened, Joyce, it was a great idea. to
No,
put
great,
this on.
great
So I think
presentation. I
to
appreciate
hear
it.
I think what what they both have said, though, it's gonna happen again. You were gonna have something happen again, and people just have to understand that the town is doing the best they can.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of all that they do, and I know you guys are too.
And the roads needed doing, because if we'd let them not be done, they would have gotten worse and worse. The
Yeah.
traffic we're getting because of it.
And it truly
Absolutely.
is, Scott has no flexibility. He
Right.
gets a range of when you're gonna see them. And it's,
And can I bring up another complaint that's come up again, just if people are listening so that they get some information? Keishore from the Hadley Business Council sent an email out to DOT because there were been a lot of complaints from the businesses in particular, but also residents. And I can only imagine the police officers who are doing the details, people not understanding why so much, dirt is being allowed to billow through the atmosphere. And it was interesting, the response that came back from the DOT is that there's actually been a change in how they're allowed to do control of the surface dirt. And that they used to use a compound that they can no longer use. And so they're limited to strictly using water, and that depending on the weather conditions and the dryness of the air, the evaporation can happen very quickly. So it's not that they're not trying to mitigate that. But again, depending on the conditions, they can only do so much, and it will continue.
And the big push right now is to get Route 9 paved before commencement.
Right.
And so that way you don't have several tens of thousands of people trying to drive at 5 miles an hour through this gravel section. And then the same thing for move out time.
I keep
So-
telling people it's for the Memorial Day Parade, which is
Yeah,
much
me
more
too.
important to the town than what's going on next door.
I just want to add to Thursday, when we started the milling process, they started off, really strong on trucks. And then throughout the day, the trucking diminished tremendously. So at the end of the day, they wanted to keep going, to keep on schedule, et cetera. I ended up having our trucks do it to finish out the day, because we would have never finished. So we would have been even more behind schedule. So just wanted to throw you out that we did everything in our power to keep things rolling. And when this project started, they told us 2 days of paving. 1 day, solid day on Bay Road, and then South Maple and Rocky Hill the following day. Well, trucking problems, once again, they couldn't do it. So we got pushed to 3 days. So logistically wise, there was a little bit of problems, but I did use our equipment and guys just to keep the operation running the best we
The
could.
South Maple is done now too.
Yeah, they're all done, yeah.
Perfect.
The other thing that we did too is that there were times with the town paving, obviously we can't really tell the state what to do, but with the town paving, we had to tell them no on a couple of occasions. And Scott wasn't too happy with me. At one point last week, I said, they got to be done at 6. My guys have been out there for X period of time. You've got to tell them they've got to stop. And then today they wanted to close Rocky Hill Road. The contractor said, want to close Rocky Hill Road. And I told the detail officers, I said, that's not reasonable within the plan. So we're going to deal with it on an alternating basis. So we have told the contractors the best within our ability that they've got to work within our restraints.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Good job, Jeff.
Appreciate it. Thanks for staying tonight. Appreciate that.
you.
You've had a long day. Good night.
I did not have.
Oh, no.
Tires, brand new tires last
They
week.
still.
Yeah, there's one more thing, but
Can't let them go. Why?
there's 6.4. Mass DOT signage for safe passage of bicyclists.
Yes, so that was a grant that came through that Mass DOT will pay for signage that they are directed to do under an act to reduce fatalities. And as I wrote in here, it's in passing a vulnerable user, the operator of a motor vehicle shall pass at a safe distance of not less than 4 feet and at a reasonable and proper speed. So to address this, there's signage materials that are available for towns paid for by Mass DOT, but they need to be installed by the town and the location. So that's what I wanted to
So
bring
is
to
that
you
on
guys.
state roads only since they're paying for it, or we could put it on any road?
No, because we wouldn't be installing on the state road. This is anywhere that you, that
Mm.
I was hoping to get recommendations from both of you.
Well,
Where-
certainly, but Route 47 is a state road. I see that as a critical place. for bicycles.
47 is not a.
It's a rooted,
It's a route.
it's a rooted road,
Yes.
not a.
But
State road.
But we can put them anywhere in town.
Yes.
We can put them on Sunrise Drive if we thought it was busy. Okay.
That was my suggestion, was Route 47. And at each of the town lines coming into town. And then at the major intersections of Bay and Lawrence Plain, Bay Road, Middle Street, and then River and Rocky Hill.
How about Maple, north and south?
So north or south Maple.
North and South Maple.
I see
Yeah.
a lot of bikes there. I see
They come like right off the bike path. They're all over our road. It's, I mean,
Mhm.
they're Mill Valley.
oh.
And I say that because there are a couple of times
Yeah,
where
they're-
clearly somebody wasn't adhering to the act to reduce fatalities by their own behavior. And I've seen a couple of bikes almost wind up in the ditches along South Maple in particular. It's
I've
pretty bad.
seen people almost stop. They don't follow the rules of the road either. So they don't stop the stop signs. They just keep going and.
And it's a little windy and you get a couple of dips along there. And so sometimes, you know, they don't see somebody on a bike. So I would just,
North and South
consideration.
Maple don't even have shoulders on the road or anything.
I think 47 sees the most just because it's a scenic byway and the bike path dumps out right here on the street. So
they tend to get a lot of bike groups.
Are we limited to what we can get for signage?
So I'll find that out when I do the application. I just wanted your input. Certain with signage, I just like having your input on that because I know signage isn't the most favorite thing to be putting up all over town, but this was important. So
I wish I felt it would be beneficial.
Right. I
Is it
don't
more-
disagree with you on that.
Well, I think then one thought would be everywhere the bike path crosses a street or road, we should have a sign because bikes may be coming off the bike path onto them in one direction or another.
Especially the ones that don't stop at the stop sign.
Right, like Cemetery Road, and East Street, and West Street, and Middle Street.
No, I see they're putting up a Hawking.
South Maple Street.
South Maple, or not that would probably do much because people don't even bother pushing a button that's already there to cross. They just, I almost hit somebody.
Yeah, they don't. The bicycles need to somehow be constrained too, because they do not follow the rules of the road.
The difficult part about the bicycle laws is that bicycles are required to follow the rules of the road and they're required to stop at stop signs and they're required to stop at stop signals. The biggest motivation for everybody to drive within the rules of the road is not the ticket itself. It's the impact that it has on your auto insurance. And so all of us, you know, if you get a $100 fine, $105 fine for blowing through a stop sign, most people look at the $105 fine saying, okay, that's not awful, but I know what it's going to do to my insurance.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is with bicyclists, if I stop a bicyclist here at the intersection of Middle Street and the bike path for blowing through the stop sign, I can issue them a $105 fine. That's fine. It's well within our rights to do. But within the bicycle laws, it's specific that bicycle offenses cannot impact a bicyclist's auto insurance. So there is no motivation whatsoever for them to pay or appeal, and it cannot suspend their driver's license for failure to pay.
So that sounds like a question to send right to Joe Comerford and say, this has gotten to be an issue. We need the bicycle laws to permit.
There's got to be some kind of bite to it.
Right.
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 Exactly.
I mean, besides the fact that, you know, if it's between a car and a bicyclist, they're gonna lose, but I guess that's not
Isn't
enough.
there one between like a snowmobile or a dirt bike or anything like that? Aren't they subject to
Motorized bikes.
motor?
So if you were to drive your ATV or any of your off-road vehicles on a public way, ultimately it would impact your driver's license. Because you have now taken that off-road vehicle and by driving it on the roadway, you have essentially turned it into a motor vehicle. So For, you know, we.
Can't say that for a bike.
You cannot say that for a bike.
What other motorized
So
bikes?
it's-
Respectfully, excuse me,
Assisted by.
Amy,
The electric
Chair,
ones.
this wasn't on the agenda. We've gone off.
Okay.
Sorry.
Moving right along.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Right?
Yes.
We're good.
Okay.
Sorry. So what I want to just conclude with, you listened to what their suggestions are. We'll put a list together. I'll know more what the application is going to look like. And I can always send it to you guys. I don't think we have to make a clear decision before the application goes out. But once we have to make that decision, I'll send you the list of streets that you guys recommend and what we've heard today, and just, I'll get your feedback.
Yeah, we just keep in mind, we've got, you know, we don't want to pile too many signs in one spot.
Right.
Okay, all right. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
All right. And I think you guys are all just like free to go because we're gonna move into executive.
Well, we have to go through the
session.
other items here, just.
Oh, sorry. Any other items not anticipated 24 hours in advance?
You know,
Oh, okay. Town administrator report.
Yep, real quick, just as you know, I got back from vacation. Thank you. It was wonderful. I just want to let, if you haven't seen it, Zaturka Park has all of the new playground equipment.
I
and
have
it's
seen it.
great pictures. The recreation, the commission will be planning like a ribbon cutting ceremony, and you guys will get invitations to that. And I'm giving Amy some guidance on that.
There was at least 15 people using it last night when I went home at
Oh, that's awesome.
5 o'clock.
That's great.
So-
That's great.
I used to play t-ball there.
Just let you know that if anyone had talked about them seeing the brush cutting being done on a dike, that was done, got as far as we could. There's still some areas we can't reach, but I'm working with the engineer on that. You'd have to bring in a barge to get some of those areas close to the water, which we can't do at this time, but these are our baby steps. That was a very costly project. But we did have money set aside for that, so.
Do you know why they don't allow the trees to grow?
Yes, I heard that. Because when a tree dies, its roots leave a hole that the water can penetrate. and
Okay.
Cause damage.
And they would rather have other natural vegetation, which is another approach that we'll hear more about in the next few years on how to address the erosion and things like that.
Carolyn, can I just ask a question? Are we okay with you giving this report? There's nothing.
Perhaps if we only listen.
Under town administrators report?
Right, I think that was a point of question that we had for clarification about whether or not.
What, the dike?
No, the town administrator report doesn't have to have the details. I was just sharing the details. So I can list the projects. That's what the town administrator's report is. I don't have to list the projects on the agenda.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're good on that, that's allowed.
Okay.
Right.
As
It seems
far
to
as
me
I
it should
know.
be fine.
Yeah. That's the town, yeah.
That's what the agenda item is, the administrator's report.
Yeah.
And I'm just throwing out that date for special town meeting. Tentatively, if you guys are all set, okay with this, if you can check your calendars for October 26th, believe it or not, it's time for me to start that warrant. And then the email.gov, we should be finishing that up in the next 4 weeks. And I know that Jane and Molly were able to attend the sprinkler demonstration with the state fire marshal over at the Legion. It was pretty remarkable. It's on Hadley Media and it is worth watching. It was excellent. So that's
Not if you want to sleep.
No, it says if your house is on fire, just get out. Forget your stuff.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Right. Select board items for future discussion.
One of the things we had talked about having the town administrator goals come back.
I can put them, you want to put on the 17th, 21st? Is it 21st? What's the
June 7th and June
21st.
21st.
21st?
Skipping the Oh, yeah, every other.
Oh, do you want a meeting next week?
No. We're talking about June now. We're not in May. We're out of May now, after tonight.
For meetings.
Yeah, I'm just.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's sitting like right there on my desk. So thank you.
Announcements. Is there-
Anything else? Okay,
Oh, school members liaison. report.
any liaison reports?
No, it's school committee meeting on Monday.
Senior Center had an average of 103 people a day last month.
Wow.
It's good. Announcements?
Memorial Day Parade, Sunday at 2 from the Legion.
Are we invited to that?
Sunday, the 28th.
28.
Yeah, oh, yeah, not this week.
Not this-
Someone said something about like mailings, like actual mailings. Is there like a mailing?
What'd you say, Amy?
Oh, Denise Barstow sent an email.
Yeah.
And I forwarded the email
Yeah.
to y'all. She also mailed a packet to us, but I had already forwarded the information to you, and the information is loaded on the town website.
Okay, sorry.
I was looking to see if we're doing the cemeteries.
It's on there.
It's on there.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Sorry, my parents said something, they got something in the mail for me. And so I wasn't sure if the town has my address wrong, but they shouldn't because I vote. So I don't know, that was weird.
That would come from the
Someone else.
committee that was.
Okay.
I did not,
Okay, sorry.
Really, I didn't get anything.
I don't know, it was weird.
Get in your email.
Okay, sorry about that.
Are we done?
Announcements,
not-
Joyce?
You got your.
Yeah, I do. I have Mr. Edward Feidenkevich, who graduated from Hopkins and was a Navy veteran. He married a local, Barbara Bukowski, and they have lived in Agawam most of their life, but they also have many other relatives here in town. Then there was Richie Chamara, lifelong resident of Hadley, married to Leona Waskevich Chamara. Steve and his wife Tammy, and they have a daughter. That was their son, is their son. And then there is Debbie, their daughter also, and grandchildren. So our condolences to the Chamara family and to the Feidenkevich family.
Thank you. Anyone have any other announcements? Okay. So we're.
You want a motion to go into executive session?
Yeah, so I'll need a motion to enter into executive session for the following purposes. To conduct strategy on the employee handbook. And to review an open meeting complaint.
Here, you got it. Just read where it says my name. This is you.
Yeah. Well, I need a motion, right? Or,
Yeah.
Pardon? You just read the motion though, didn't you?
yeah. It's not well enough.
She didn't finish
Yeah,
it though,
okay.
so.
I'll make a motion that we enter into executive session for the following purposes for Mass General Law, Chapter 38, 21A2 to conduct strategy sessions for the employee handbook, and Chapter 38, 21A3 to review an open meeting law complaint filed by Sue Del Molino and not to reconvene an open session. And then you read this as chair of the select board.
Okay. No, it is on the bottom, but do we need a second?
Yes.
Second.
Okay. As chair of the select board, I hereby announce the select board will hold an executive session for the following purposes for MGL chapter 30A, 21A2 to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for the employee handbook.
And then go up top.
And to review an open meeting law complaint filed by Susan Del Molino and not to reconvene an open session.
Roll call.
Motion to
Roll call
adjourn.
vote.
Roll call vote, Keegan,
Yes.
Chungalo,
Yes.
Parsons,
Yes.
Nevinson.
Yes.
And Isaac.
Yes.